Shit. Start over. I just almost fell out of my chair.
I don't know. I think that'd be kind of funny to leave in.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host Chad, joined alongside me by my brother, and usually we're a sports podcast. If you're watching, you watch me almost just fall out of my chair. How you doing, Tanner?
I'm not falling out of my chair, so I'm doing pretty well. But yeah, man. In the sporting world, a lot has happened recently. We've had, the Rangers. They have won the World Series. I think since the last time we talked. Last time we were here, I'm pretty sure it was Game 5, and they won that Game 5, and they looked really good doing it. So Rangers, congratulations! Just wanted to shout you out a little bit because I know, we're big Rangers fans over here, and maybe not you, Chad, but me and Pops. But like, it was
You
awesome. I know you watched it.
it's it's nice to see. It's a thing of the past now, right?
Yeah.
Where we're a little bit behind because we're so into football, and like we said, we haven't talked since the last time they won it. It was just an odd recording how we did it, but yeah, you know what I mean. I mean, they won it. They're officially the champs. They got their first one, and it's good to see that the Rangers got their first World Series. But I think Corey Seager. I mean, that was one of the greatest postseasons I've ever seen,
What a
and I think
man.
that was one of the greatest series between teams I've ever seen too. I mean, you don't see. I mean, Arizona and the Texas Rangers. Like, if you were a betting man or woman and you took that one at the beginning of the season, you'd have made some money. You
Oh
know what
yeah.
I mean? You would have made some absolute money. I don't think anybody saw Arizona getting there, and I don't think anybody saw the Texas rebuild go this quick.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? But the key deadline pickups they made, the fact that they were already up 2 games to 1 whenever they started getting their injuries, that helped them a lot too. Then they went 3-1, and all they had to do was win one out of the next three. And you knew they could do that. And then, not to mention Corey Seager, just every time he comes up to the plate, he's either getting walked, a base hit, a home run, or almost a base hit. It's never like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean, just hitting into a double play, never a pop out. Like, it feels like he's on like a MLB My Player. You know what I mean? But heck yeah. I mean, I'm an Angels fan. We're not going to be there in a long time. PSG, we lost to Milan today. Not looking good. San Jose hasn't won a game this season. It's not looking good for my sports teams. So right now, we got to get into a little bit of football, and I don't mean to segue into another bad one of our teams, but but for college football this week, we're going to hit our college football prospect spotlight, and we're going to hit Texas A&M, and then we're also going to recap a little bit of NFL and then talk next week matchups. We're going to jump into the A&M talk right now. Texas A&M, they lost again.
Yeah.
Their record is now 5-4. Tanner and I both went to school there, and you know, my biggest question. I have a ton of questions for you, but my first question is: Is this Jimbo's last season? Because how do you justify the number one recruiting class of all time? You can get away with that their freshman year, but their sophomores this year still lost 4 games. So what happens? What do you think happens with Jimbo?
It's really interesting because I mean, you look at it and Jimbo is, a national champion, right? Like he's taken teams to the mountain, so to speak. But you said it, the number one recruiting class, and honestly, he really hasn't done anything with it. I will say that the most that he's done at A&M was I think it was like a 5 seed. At max, they were number 5. They should have gotten to the college playoffs, but they didn't. That was a great season. They had a really, really, really good explosive offense, and they could run the ball really well. And that was during COVID, so there was a lot of ifs, maybes, and buts during that. But one good season, you would say, out of however many he's been here with that much talent, and not to mention the off the field issues too with his players that are so talented. It's just kind of, I don't know. I'm not saying it's time to abandon ship, but I'm not all the way on the ship still. You know what I mean? It's just kind of, if things keep going in this direction, you don't get better, you're not progressing at all, then yeah, I think it's time to get rid of them. But they should hopefully try and end out the season strong. I mean, they almost took out Ole Miss, which was there's no reason they should have even been in that game. Ole Miss was number 10 in the country, so it was like sometimes they play up to their opponents, sometimes they play pretty badly, sometimes they play down to their opponents, and it's just it's very inconsistent, and that's what you really don't want to see with a head coach who has that caliber of players and what's the word, that like resume behind him, right? So
True. National champ
national champ and
with Jameis Winston at Florida State.
exactly, like if you can turn Jameis Winston, no offense Jameis, but into a national champion, and he looks pretty good in that national championship too. I don't know. It's really impressive, and I'm just kind of wondering why, at A&M, why this stuff is happening. Because I mean, he's supposed to be A&M savior, but not really much saving has been happening. It's just kind of the same thing we've been seeing, week in and week out for the past however many years.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things too with the previous head coach of Kevin Sumlin. He was really good in the recruiting train, and then Jimbo stepped it up to heights that you couldn't even think that A&M would ever get to. Like I said, the number one recruiting class a year ago, and I don't know if it'll happen again. We'll see. They're always in the top 10, always top 5. You know what I mean? Specifically in the SEC. But the reason I asked the question is because next year, I mean, the SEC changes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The University of Texas comes in, the University of Oklahoma comes in, the divisions, everything changes. The SEC completely changes. If I'm not mistaken, A&M doesn't play Alabama every year. Thank goodness. It's about time that that one goes away. But you have a team now that you're competing with, not only in the same conference, but now you're competing for quite literal prospects, and you've been doing it. I'm not saying that they haven't been competing, because when there's a top 3 there in Texas and University of Texas and Texas A&M are sitting there in those top 3 choices. Obviously, you're still competing, but now, I mean, it's the real deal. You're both going to be in the SEC, and if you continue to have one program get better each season, because right now you can't really say anything about UT. I understand they almost lost this past week against Kansas State, who was ranked, but you can't say anything because they're playing right now with the backup quarterback. Quinn Ewers has been injured. Arch Manning's just not there yet. You know what I mean? Develop wise, he's just not there yet. He needs another year for sure. He's going to come into. That's very scary, by the way. Arch Manning, SEC, first year, depending on what happens with Quinn. But I don't know. There's a lot of question marks for me. And the big thing for me is that recruiting is not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
A&M's getting very good recruiting classes all the time. Yes, there's some off the field issues with kids, but at the same time, once again, they're kids. I mean, they're 18 to like 26 years old.
That's
you know
true.
what I mean?
But
I mean,
to be fair,
kids.
You don't see this happening at Alabama. You don't see it happening in
I
Georgia.
mean, you might, but maybe they paying them off a little bit on the table there with Nick Saban and Kirk.
I mean,
Smart.
yeah,
you know what I mean.
A little bit. A&M's got money too. I'm just saying, I don't think it's an excuse. Is all I'm saying.
No, I don't think it's an excuse. I don't think it's an excuse necessarily. I think it's. I mean, I think you get a stupid play every now and then, and you can blame it on that. But some of the stuff that's happening with specifically A&M football has been pretty crazy over the offseason. Don't really want to get into that too much, but I mean, we'll see what happens. But my thing is, what does he have to do differently? Because the coordinators at one point in time have all been changed.
Mm-hmm.
So can't get better recruits. I mean, yes, you can always get better recruits, but can't change coordinators. What else is there to do? You know what I mean? What else can you do as a program, and what else can you do if you're Jimbo?
I mean, it kind of sounds like a cop-out answer, but I'm going to go with I just think they have so much talent. They have so much talent everywhere except the quarterback position. And it's the most important position. You see it with A&M a lot. I don't think they've had a good quarterback since, no offense, Kellen Mond, but since Johnny Manziel. A quarterback that can realistically give you a chance to win a national championship. I mean, I don't think they've had one. It's been rough, I think, with Max Johnson. He's been okay. He's been all right. And the kid before him, he was all right. The kid before him, he was, was all right. It's just a lot of this okayness at quarterback. You're not going to go out there and win a national championship if you have a quarterback that's okay. And I think every other piece around them is good. The offensive line struggles at some points, but overall, through history, I'd say A&M has a pretty good track record with offensive linemen. Defense, they've looked pretty good. They've got multiple starters in the NFL. Myles Garrett, Von Miller. Our boy Donovan Wilson. Like, there's a lot of stuff pointing towards A&M being a really, really good program that puts out really good athletes, except at the quarterback position. everything but that. And it's kind of like, well, I just don't see him contending if they don't have, that big man up front. If they don't have that guy who's going to make the big throws in the big moments, who's not going to turn the ball over and make those mistakes. You saw that last week with Max Johnson. So it's just tough for me to call them even a contender when they don't have that. The year that they were, I think, number 5 in the country, they ran the ball a lot and they ran it really well. And Kellen Mond didn't make a lot of mistakes. He was kind of that bus driver role you see and people talk about a lot. That can work. It's fine. But everything else needs to work around it. They had a super dominant offensive line, and, their running back was pretty good at the time. I think his name was Devon Achane. So I think that was Devon's year. But it's just it just comes down to me at the quarterback position. I just you need another Johnny Manziel in there. You need someone who's not going to make highlight plays, but someone who can make the big throws. That's just the big thing for me.
It's just been unfortunate with all the top end quarterback talent that you've gotten in, they just haven't panned out.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Kyler Murray, he didn't pan out. This is a someone era. Before that, Kyle Allen. And now, you have a kid with Max Johnson who has stepped into the starter role. You had Haynes King, who was a 5-star prospect. You know what I mean? The kid was a 5-star prospect, but he's just been plagued by injuries since he's been at A&M. So I understand, that you're technically on the backup quarterback as well now at A&M, but it's getting to the point now where you got it. I mean, it's not that they're not competing. That's the biggest thing, right? You took down you didn't take down Ole Miss this past week. You had 2 chances to win that game if you were A&M. You had 2 chances to win that game. You had 1 chance in the first half to kind of pull away with momentum, not necessarily pull away, but if you got to stop, you start to get momentum on your side, and it changes a lot of what that score was, in my opinion. And then at the second half of the end of the game, A&M had a chance to win it. They just couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that Texas A&M is that far off. The reason we're highlighting them this week is just because Tanner and I both were really into the game, and before this episode, we were talking so much about A&M, so we scrapped everything and just went with the A&M highlight segment. But last thing we're going to talk about with A&M, point blank, just going to ask it. Do you see Jimbo Fisher? I won't ask about next year because right now it's too up in the air. You can't really answer that question. If A&M goes on a heater and wins the rest of the games this year, he will be there next year. Yeah. If they go on a skid and continue to lose every game, then I don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? I don't know if everybody's going to be too happy with that. But do you see him being here in 2 years? Not starting this next year, but the year afterwards. There's no way he finishes out his contract, but you know what I mean? Like, do you see him being the coach of the future? Because right now, I think most people in Aggieland have question marks above their head, if not already kind of pushing him out of the front door.
Yeah. It's hard because, like I said earlier, his resume it speaks for himself, and he's a good head coach. I don't. He's done everything right. Maybe you could say a thing here or there, but if it's this inconsistent, if obviously they're probably not going to finish this season well, and they're probably not going to be ranked. And if they finish the next season unranked as well, with the same kind of, defeats and stuff like that and the same kind of disappointments, I think it might be time to move on. I don't really know where you would go after that, but, change is necessary, especially in college football. Things change constantly in this sport. So you got to switch some things up. Jimbo, he's done his best, but realistically, he's had 1 good season, so it's like, what are you supposed to do? It's a business decision at the end of the day. I like Jimbo. I think he's a good head coach. It's just maybe not working out. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, if they, like we said, go on a heater, then we'll revisit the situation at the end of the season.
Yeah, but all out, then stay.
Of course. For this football prospect player spotlight, we're gonna hit Bo Nix, the quarterback out of Oregon. He's draft class senior. We're getting a lot of questions about him. He's a 5-year player, played at Auburn and played at Oregon. Just gonna go ahead like I do every week and read my report, what I have on him. I've watched extensive tape on him, mainly because I thought he could come out into the NFL a couple times. So I literally have gone back and watch again. So a 5-year player that could have entered the draft in the 2022 season, but instead came back for vengeance and is leading the Ducks right now to another great season. Top 6 team, if I'm not mistaken, top 7. His ability to roll out of the pocket and make throws on the run is what I see as one of his best traits. I see Bo Nix going to a West Coast style offense in the NFL, especially with his running ability. And he relies on his legs tremendously and reminds me a lot of former Ole Miss quarterback. We were talking about SEC, so thought I would throw in the SEC reference today with Chad Kelly in college with the scrambling ability. You know, Chad Kelly got out the pocket like crazy and didn't necessarily hit the deep ball, but he hit the medium ball a lot. And I think that Bo Nix has that as well. I think he has the ability to, like I just said, I was just talking to myself reading it right now. Medium ball on the dime while on the run. He struggles with short passes sometimes, and he also struggles with deep balls because he rolls out so much. His feet aren't necessarily stationary in the pocket. He is getting, I don't know. He looks like an NCAA. You know, on NCAA 14 when you're playing on rookie and you just hold the turbo and run out one way. That's Bo Nix every single time. He gets the shotgun and he runs out one way. It's the most West Coast quarterback I've seen. And I think I could easily see him going in the first couple rounds. If he doesn't go in the first couple rounds, I don't even know why we're doing this show. There's no way he doesn't go in the first couple rounds.
Yeah.
But stat wise, passing, he's got a 65% completion percentage for over 13,000 yards, 93 touchdowns, 25 interceptions with an average rating of 144.5. That is solid.
That's very solid.
Now, in 2019, that's right, he goes all the way back to 2019 in Auburn. That was arguably, he had a better season than his sophomore season in 2020 in Auburn. But his last year, he had almost 3,600 yards, 29 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Each year, his freshman year, he had 16 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. His sophomore year, he had 12 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. So you don't like to see the interceptions go up year over year, but then if you continue to watch him, is a red shirt than a freshman that, you know, and he continues to go each year in the NCAA, he gets better. And that's that year over year progression with what we hit on last episode when we hit the prospect player spotlight. So that's his passing stats, pretty solid. The reason I said West Coast is because, yes, he has 388 attempts for almost 1,500 yards and 37 touchdowns. So this kid can scramble. Now, how much can he scramble coming into the NFL? That's the biggest question. And the biggest thing what I want to say lastly about Bo Nix is I get scared when I see prospects rely on their legs. There was a prospect by the name of Zach Wilson who relied on his legs way too much at BYU and still does it in the NFL. And it's not really working out too much. So I'm not the biggest fan when players rely on their legs, but at the same time, once again, couch warrior. Better, such a high athlete, going to go at the end of the first round, if not the second round. And it's just that simple. Somebody's going to draft Bo Nix probably in the early second, like I said, and he's probably going to be a starting quarterback within the first, not season, but very close to the end of the season. So that's what I got on Bo Nix. Have you ever seen him play?
Have I ever seen Bo Nix play? Yes. He's been in the college ranks for a long time, honestly. I watched him play a lot when he was at Auburn, and I've watched him play too. But back when he was at Auburn, I think the biggest thing when I was back watching him was just like, he doesn't look that good. Back when A&M would play him, I would go to the games and just be like, okay, Bo Nix, I'm not really that scared. But, like you said, I think the biggest thing is just he's continued to get better. And I think the passing stats alone just indicate that. So it's just, you want to see that from a college athlete just continuing to get better. It shows that they have growth. And I think another one of the biggest things is he played in the SEC for 3 years. And then he moved to the Pac-12. And he got better. And I'm not going to say the Pac-12 is harder than the SEC, but this year it might be, because they're balling. You have so many teams that are ranked within the Pac-12, and he has been playing well against almost all of them. So I think this is a great way to cap off his career in college, and he looks really good. I think just he's played really well. If you're an NFL team and you want to take a chance on this guy, I think it's a good chance to take. I don't think he's going to go, break numbers in the first round of the NFL draft, but I think he's probably a really good quarterback that you could take a chance on, and he might even pan out, So the thing about the dual threat thing is with his legs and the West Coast style, we see it all the time. It's tough because, they use their legs. it diminishes their throwing ability, you could say, in a sense. But Lamar Jackson exists, right? So it's a double-edged sword, I think. And obviously Zach Wilson is kind of like, but I think Bo Nix has a much, much better ability to throw the ball in terms of just being a pocket quarterback. I've seen him, running is his second option in my opinion when it comes to Bo Nix, and he's pretty accurate when it comes to throwing the ball. So I'm not too worried about the running kind of stuff. And in the NFL, they're going to develop his passing game even more. So I like him. I think he's a good quarterback.
Yeah, I think a solid quarterback to go in the second round. I think if you're a team needing a quarterback, not necessarily, right away, I think a really, really good spot for him would honestly be the Jets in the second round, just because Aaron Rodgers is going to be there for a couple of years. The fact that anybody can learn under Aaron Rodgers, is going to make them a better quarterback. And what does he need to improve on? His passing ability. Aaron Rodgers is one of the nicest passers we've ever seen in the NFL. So not a bad guy. We'll see what happens in terms of where he goes in the NFL draft and who takes a chance on him. Like you said, realistically, you're kind of always taking a chance on a quarterback. You have no idea if they're going to pan out. Look at Tennessee right now. Look at how many quarterbacks they've taken in the early rounds, and they just have not panned out. So second round quarterback, not a bad way to go if you start off day two and a quarterback like that still sitting there. So we'll see what happens. But jumping to the NFL, we're gonna do a little bit of Week 9 recap. We got some news, we got some surprise results of the week, and then just gonna talk about the Cowboys and Phillies matchup. And then last segment of the episode, we're gonna do matchup preview and picks. But haven't plugged ourselves in a while. RDH Sports Podcast, that's us. We do it every week. We also do it in the off season as well. We usually talk football, but really, really get into college football in the offseason. That's why we're only hitting one segment of college football right now, folks. I know the listeners that come back year over year and always listen to this pod and read the articles are really wanting more college football. We're going to get there. We're going to get there pretty soon. So, like I said, RDH Sports, find us on YouTube, Instagram, all the socials. Check us out. You know what I mean?
Check us out.
Now, Week 9 NFL recap. Started off, Tanner, CJ Stroud, rookie passing game record, 470 passing yards, 5 TDs versus the Tampa Bay defense, who's not bad. Take it away.
Who is not bad? I mean, if you just go down the list of their starters on defense, you would probably be like, I know a lot of those guys. Even if you're a casual at football. That was really impressive. Let me tell you that right now. CJ Stroud has an elite arm ability, and he scored like 5 touchdowns and like 450 yards passing, and that's just not something a rookie does. Let me just put that plainly. Rookies don't do that. Go look at Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh. He has, Deontay Johnson. He's got George Pickens, and he's got Najee Harris in an okay offensive line, and he's not doing that. CJ Stroud has none of those people, and he has another rookie by the name of Tank Dell, and that's about all they got over there in Houston, and he's diming them up. It's not about who you have. It's not about, the keys that you put around CJ Stroud. It's about what he can do as a quarterback, and he is lighting up the NFL right now, which I don't think anybody expected to happen, especially Bryce Young, I guess, because every sports analyst in the world was saying Bryce Young is just a better prospect. He's just a better player than CJ Stroud, but CJ Stroud has proven the haters wrong. I think just the biggest thing is that he's going out there and doing it week in and week out. He's just putting up these numbers and he's looking good while he's doing it. He's playing confidently. He's not making these little dink and dunk throws. He's ripping it. It looks like he's back in college. He's like throwing for 10, 15, 20, 30 yards a play. It's just like, how do you have to if you get 450 yards. So it's really, really impressive. And I mean, I think the Texans got a good one. I really do. He just looks like a veteran out there. He's composed. There's not a lot of bad things you can say about this guy. I mean, he has one interception. One. Ever. In the NFL. Ever. He's like 15 touchdowns to 1 interception. Is that not just insane? Like that has to be a rookie record. I'm not going to look at it, but it has to be.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that he even got 400 yards as a rookie. Period. If you even throw 300 yards
5 touchdowns
as a rookie. Yeah. 5 touchdowns.
I played against him in fantasy.
Yeah.
It sucked, man. He had 60 points in our league.
At least you didn't have Tampa Bay's defense probably had a negative 40 burger there for you.
Oh yeah.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing with CJ Stroud. I'm not gonna lie to you. He was my number 3 prospect last year. I went back and looked. He was my number 3. Bryce Young was my number 1. Jalen Carter was my number 2. CJ Stroud was my number 3. But what I did say when I went back and looked at the scouting report, I said it wasn't far off on either of them, and I'd be okay if my team chose either. I know that's a horrible cop out way to say, but I'm trying to cover myself because I'm technically in that mold of people that rank, college athletes. That's probably why you follow a lot of this show. So if you're listening from last year, like, wait a second. So anyway, CJ Stroud, in my opinion, last year was the second best quarterback coming out of Ohio State. Here's the reason for that. He didn't look as consistent as Bryce Young did in college. Nobody saw Bryce Young struggling this hard. Nobody saw Bryce Young struggling this hard. I'm not saying it's over because he's at Carolina. I understand that CJ Stroud's in Houston and no disrespect to Houston and Carolina fans right now, but if you stacked up Houston's roster and Carolina's roster, I think Houston kind of destroys them. In my opinion,
Really?
I think Carolina is. I do, but that's just because a lot of their young talent that they've drafted over the past couple of years have been really good, but this season they're injured, and that's what I wanted to get to. He's still doing it with injured Texans.
True.
Like, this kid is not only in the Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's probably already won it. He's in the MVP watch right now. Dak had arguably, one of the best rookie seasons of all time behind Ben Roethlisberger, and he didn't win it. Don't think he's going to win MVP, just saying. But CJ Stroud, dude, I did not see him being this good out of the gate, and I really thought that he would struggle the first couple of years in the Texans offense, just because when you watch Davis Mills, I didn't think Davis Mills was that bad of a quarterback. But then I'm sitting here watching the game, and I'm like, no, he was. Like, not a whole lot's changed other than a couple guys, you know what I mean? But CJ Stroud,
big coaching staff changes and stuff like that, and it comes to offensive schemes are very different. I mean, it's I think it's the first year for this whole scheme and this coaching staff, so it's really interesting that they're just having this much success.
Yeah, you don't see it out the gate this fast, and I saw it on social media. I don't remember who. I feel like it was ESPN or Sports Center, but. Did you know CJ Stroud has more touchdowns than Kenny Pickett does?
Yes, I did see
that. That hurts. That hurts a little bit. Sorry, Pittsburgh fans. That one hurts a little bit.
Look, hey, in the NFL, the storylines, they don't always work out.
No.
He went to Pitt. Doesn't mean he's going to be good in Pittsburgh, but whatever.
we can't write him off just yet, but it's not looking too great, but because at the same time they've got some really solid receivers over there at Pittsburgh. But jump into the NFL surprise result of the week. We have a couple of them. We wouldn't be a sports podcast, specifically a football podcast, if we didn't call out this game. The Vikings versus the Falcons. Josh Dobbs comes over on a trade. We talked about it in the previous episode. It made our top 5 trades before the trade deadline. And what I said last episode is this is the perfect chance for him to prove himself, and he has 1 year to do it. Kirk Cousins is going to come back. Everybody knows he's going to come back. Kind of like the situation with Jacoby Brissett last year in Cleveland. He knew he was a starter, but when Deshaun came in, he knew he was going to give the team back to Deshaun, right? Kind of similar situation here with Dobbs. They trade a later round pick to get him, and he doesn't even know all of his teammates' names. He doesn't know the whole playbook, and he goes out there and wins on an NFL Sunday against the Atlanta Falcons, who we'll get into in a second. I want to start with the Vikings. Joshua Dobbs, you love to see it. You love to see it. He's been on so many teams. I watched him a ton when he played in college for Tennessee. And he, had one of the greatest college games I've ever seen against Texas A&M with a 6 or 7 overtime game. But what a game. What a game. What a game. His number 1 wide receiver is out. Like I said, he doesn't know a lot of the teammates, and he goes in there and gets a win. This is their guy for this season. This is their guy. And this is the guy that the team is easily going to rally around. And I can't wait to see what happens when Justin Jefferson comes back. How crazy is that Josh Dobbs did what he did? How crazy is that he did that in the NFL?
It's crazy. It really, really is. Because you don't see this happen. You don't. Starters, or quarterbacks, they come in and they're not immediately starters. It takes them a while to get used to the playbook. Rookies don't do this. Or not rookies. People who are new to a system don't do this. And especially, he's basically like a rookie in this system. So it's like, except CJ Stroud. But he has had maybe like 3 days at that time. I think they said he got in on like Thursday, and then he plays Sunday, he starts, and he has a good game. It's not like he has a bad game. He has a good game. I think, to your credit, I think a lot of what you can attribute this to is he's a veteran in the NFL. He's been around a lot of teams. Off the top of my head, I know he's been on Pittsburgh and Cleveland alone, and I've seen him play a couple of times for Cleveland in preseason, stuff like that. But he's knows a lot about a lot of systems, I'll say that. And he's smart. I think he's an aerospace engineer, so he can pick up things quick. He can do things and process things probably quicker than the average, American. So it's like he comes into this system. He probably, has kind of this like understanding of how to come into a system, how to be effective immediately. So it sucks to say, but he's been here. He's done this. He's been on multiple teams. He's had multiple opportunities. He's kind of got a chip on his shoulder at this point because a lot of teams take chances on him, but they don't keep him. He's kind of like their scapegoat when it comes to things that are happening bad with the team. So I love it. I think it's an awesome thing. It is a storyline. Storylines sometimes don't work out in the NFL, but sometimes they do. I mean, that was an awesome win. Atlanta, I guess you should be ashamed of yourself, but it's Josh Dobbs season in Minnesota, and I am here for it because I've always liked Josh Dobbs. I think he's a good quarterback. Like you said, when he was at Tennessee, I used to watch him play, and that thriller with A&M was fun too. So it's like he's been doing this his whole career. I think he's just kind of got that chip on his shoulder. I think he's just, when you give him an opportunity to start, he makes the most of it. At least he tries to. He's not going to be the end all be all quarterback for the Vikings, but for the time being, I think he's probably better than anyone else you could have gotten.
Exactly. And I mean, if you look at it right now, they already won the trade.
Yeah.
They literally already won the trade. He already won the locker room. He already won the fan base.
Definitely.
If you go look at sales for the jersey specifically, just for right after that game, after they got the win, if you go look at the increase in sales, like he's already won. The Vikings have already won the trade. And yeah, you nailed it. Like you said, a lot of quarterbacks don't play, not necessarily even quarterbacks. I'll further that point. I mean, Chase Young got traded.
Yeah.
Same time Dobbs did. And you see Chase Young in training camp, or not training camp, in practice, like this week. You know what I mean? I understand it's a way different trade and it's way harder to do because it was a 5th round pick and it was a whole lot less to talk about. But that dude runs the ball, hits his hands every play.
Yeah, it's very similar motion every single time, regardless of what team you're on. Yeah,
exactly. And if you watch it, I watched the game. I had to watch it. I had to watch the game. I was like, I got to see this. Like, I've been watching this kid. I got to see this. And, like I said, he got the win 38-20, 31-28. But you watch him on the sideline. It was a big thing on social media after the game. When I was watching the game, I was watching him snapping over and over and over and over to his center on the sideline. He was only practiced for 2 days. and they have walkthroughs right before the game on Saturday. So I don't even think they practiced. So it's like he really got in 1 to 2 days of practice with the center. He's just trying to develop the cadence, the snap cadence, and everything. So it's like, it's crazy to just see that. Crazy. And the fact that they still win is insane. And then the last thing I'll say about the Falcons, what's going on with Bijan?
I know.
What's going on with Bijan? Because
let's pull up his stats.
This is not something that you see. And I understand if maybe it's like, oh no, he's fallen off a little bit. The step to the NFL was a little bit too big, but it hasn't been. Mm-hmm. He's been great every single week that he's played, but these last couple of weeks, they just completely take him out of the game. I understand the previous week he was dealing with a bit of an illness from what I saw on reports, but now it's like the next week, it's like, okay, is it an illness again? Or what's going on? Because I get it that Tyler Algier is not that bad of a running back, but at the same time, Bijan Robinson can completely change the game. And if they would have given him the ball, nobody would be talking about this Josh Dobbs trade right now. No disrespect.
Yeah.
But all they had to do was give him the ball, and they didn't give him the ball.
I completely agree. And let me further your point by saying Bijan Robinson, this past Sunday, he had 11 carries for 51 yards. That's 4.6 yards a carry. That's a great average in the NFL. You're looking for anything above 3.5. And guess what? His backup, I will say that, Tyler Algier, had 12 carries, one more than he did, for 39 yards. So that's 3.3 per carry. He had a touchdown, but, it's a goal line kind of thing. So he's averaging almost, 1.3 more yards per carry, and Bijan has, unique abilities that no other running back can do. And he's a rookie, he's fresh, and he's a very, very high draft pick that, earlier in the season you were kind of running, not into the ground, but like running, through. Like he was your offense, and it was working. Like it was working well. You have Taylor Heineke back there. You don't want him to, have a bad run game, stuff like that. So it's really baffling to see that he's not getting the carries that, no offense to Tyler Algier, that, Bijan deserves.
Yeah, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't make any sense. And Falcons fans, let us know what you think because
they agree.
I'm in disbelief right now. There's something that I'm just not seeing because when you have the best rookie running back and arguably the top young running back in terms of traits coming out of college and freshness, I don't know. I don't understand why I don't give him the ball. Oh, and by the way, he can catch out of the backfield too. So I don't know. You know what I mean? And they take him away in the red zone. Texas is sitting there looking, his former college, like, what the hell are they doing?
What are you doing?
That's all he did. That's all he did in Texas. He just scored red zone touchdowns with with everything else he did. But just mark that to the list, and they just take him out in crucial situations, and they don't convert in the red zone. It's like, oh, what do we do? Let's kick a field goal. It's like, why didn't you just give it to Bijan on first and second down?
Yeah.
If you have 5 yards or less, and Bijan's fully healthy, why is he not in? Why is he not in? If you have 5 yards or less on second down and third down, why is he not in? And if you're in the red zone, why is he not in on first, second, and third down? I get maybe take him out one down. I get it, but I don't know. I don't understand what's going on. It's got to be an injury, or sorry, it's got to be that illness or something. Because, come on, you know what I mean? Come on.
What I found out about the Falcons over this past fantasy season is that they just kind of don't disclose a lot of the things that's happening with their players. And you don't have to. It's the NFL. Obviously, not disclosing is going to give yourself a better advantage when it comes to who you're playing. But it's like it's kind of strange with all that's going on. Because like, why would you not run a running back like Bijan? Why would you not give the ball to your best player? And no offense to anyone else on that team, but he's your best player, especially on offense, So, I mean, they just benched Desmond Ridder. Like, you got Taylor Heineke playing his first game this season. Why would you not lean on your running back? And they tried to lean on the committee, I guess, with Tyler Algier, but he's just not at the level Bijan's at. I mean, you saw Bijan earlier in the season. He makes plays happen. He breaks tackles. He jukes guys out. No offense to Algier, he had like that one good game, but Bijan Robinson, man. I mean, he's just got so much in the tank that's just waiting to be used. I don't know. It's a really interesting decision. I agree with you. I think something has to be going on behind the scenes and something that they're just not telling us, because I don't think any person in their right mind would not give Bijan the ball.
Exactly. I don't understand either. Next point, we'll move on to surprise of the week 9. The Ravens dominated the Seahawks. This was supposed to be a very close game. Same records going into the game. 37-3, the final score. Seattle couldn't do anything. It was definitely one of those games where it was a bad game, and it was definitely a game for the Ravens where they hit on all cylinders. But is this the best team in the AFC? And you have the Chiefs right there, and you arguably have the Bills and the Bengals. Well, I mean, I put the Bengals above the Bills personally, but right now with the Ravens, they have to be number 1 or number 2 on AFC power rankings. They have to be, because the Chiefs won a not that great of a game against Miami recently, but at the same time, the Ravens, I mean, they're just dominating, and that defense is for real. So what do you think? What do you think, man? Because this team, I know you're not a Ravens fan, but this is a good football team.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are the number 1 team in the AFC. If on paper, how are you going to beat that? You know, they're like you said, they're absolutely dominating teams. They stopped the Seattle offense that was in the playoffs last year, if you remember, and they played pretty well. You know, they're not a bad team. Geno's not a bad quarterback, but they're shutting down these franchise quarterbacks. You know, they did the same thing last week against Jared Goff and the Lions. So it's like, it's not that it's just like a 1 week thing. No, it's consistency over multiple weeks. Like they are playing peak football right now, and they are playing really well. And the crazy thing about it too is it's not always Lamar who's doing it. You know, one week Lamar will go off and you'll have 4 touchdowns. You know, the other week, like this week against Seattle, they just ran the ball. That's all they did. They just ran the ball. Who cares? We're just going to win anyways. And they won. You know, it's just they put up, I don't know how many points, but it was over 30. I think I look back their past 3 games, they've put up over 30. If you're doing that as an NFL team, week in and week out, you're going to win. You know, especially with this Ravens defense. I think absolutely number 1 in the AFC right now. No offense to the Chiefs, but they've looked, like you said, shaky. And their defense has gotten better, but they're just not on the level of the Ravens. You know, this is disgusting right now. I think the Ravens might have a case for best defense in the NFL, if they're not already there. You know, the Browns, they look good, don't get me wrong, but it's the Ravens all the way. If they continue doing this, and they've got 2 big games coming up against Cleveland and Cincinnati, so there are division games that's going to, you know, see a lot. But if they win both those games, I mean, I think they're probably clear front runners for at least that division and maybe even like the number 1 seed, number 2 seed in the AFC. And that's just, it's not even, it's just a full team effort. It's not just Lamar anymore, people. You know, he's got everyone working, and it's finally working. The injuries aren't plaguing them like they have been in the past years, and they're dominant. You know, this is what the Ravens, you know, should be. Like, this is kind of what they've wanted to be for a long time with Lamar, and this is the scheme working. This is the team, everything working out without the injuries and the little things here and there. So I think it's cool. I mean, you know, obviously, like you said, I'm not a big Ravens fan, but I think it's cool. I think they're a very unique NFL team, and they're fun to watch, man. I mean, goddamn.
Exactly, and that's why we like to do this this podcast, because we're allowed to talk about other teams. That's one of the main reasons we do it, right? Because these teams are so fun to watch, and Ravens, you know, are one of those teams that are pretty fun to watch. So it's not a bad football team right now at all, and like Tanner said, probably the best team in the AFC. In my opinion, it's definitely the best team in the AFC. You just never want to pick against Patrick Mahomes, but right now, matchups and everything in season thus far, they are better than the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll see how it actually ends. We still got a lot of time left, but jumping to.
But I mean, the thing about it though is, I think they're the best overall team. You know, you can say what you want about Patrick Mahomes. He's obviously, you know, probably the best quarterback, but you know, I'd say the Ravens probably have the best team and overall unit just in the AFC.
Absolutely, and I mean, I think that the Eagles had a better team than the Chiefs did going in the Super Bowl last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you look at the roster, it's better. I think if you look at the Ravens roster, just a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And mainly because of that defense and the fact that defense is just playing so well. Yes, the Chiefs have a couple pieces on defense, but the Ravens are fast and mean. And, oh, yeah, by the way, when the defense is playing extremely well, that typically means that the offense isn't tired. And the last thing you want to do is give Big Truz any more energy, because that man is absolutely insane.
Well, if you have the ability to A, have a good defense, and B, run the ball effectively, you're gonna win a lot of football games.
Yeah, they're one of the only teams in the NFL that still runs the ball. Anyway, Dallas Cowboys versus the Philadelphia Eagles. If you listened to it last week, we picked the Cowboys. Cowboys lost 28-23. They had the ball at the end of the game. They were driving, and you know, they lost at the end of the game, but quick points for me, and then I'm going to throw it over to Tanner. Wasn't on Dak. Wasn't on CD. Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb played incredible. The offensive line did not play the best, specifically Terrence Steele at the end of the game. Really had costly penalties at the end there. But defense played, you know, I would like to see them play a bit better down the stretch, but they stopped them when they needed to, and they gave the Cowboys the ball back, and they gave the Cowboys the chance to win the game, and Dallas just didn't do it. What did you see during that game, and do you think that the NFC East is, you know, the Eagles have a 2-game lead now? What do you think that the Eagles, you know, they feeling pretty good about that division right now, or you think they're still a little worried?
I think there's a lot of time left in the season. Let me start out by saying that, you know, anything can happen. We're not down the stretch We're not counting games left. There's a lot of games left, and Dallas still plays Philly. So there's a lot of things that can happen. Philly may or may not lose another game. We'll see. If you're a Cowboys fan, you want to hope they do, and then you can maybe get that division lead back at the end. But Dallas has to play really well if they want the division, and they've got a tough schedule coming up. But so does Philly because we played the same opponents, so or at least a lot of the same opponents. So it's going to be tough for both teams, but I think that's a good thing. You know, Dallas likes to play well against better teams sometimes, so it's kind of weird with Dallas. But to touch on the game, it's just the thing I just boil it down to is just miscues, execution errors. You know, just they get down to the red zone, they get down to the 1 yard line, and they turn it over on downs off of like a pass that wasn't caught in the end zone. You know, it's just like you can say whatever you want about the play. Guy was tackled too early. Who cares? It's not in the end zone. It's not a touchdown turnover on downs. And then you got Philly who can push their way across the field. Doesn't matter. Then, you know, you got Dak on that 2-point conversion stepping out of bounds. I agree with you. Dak played a really, really good game. And like we said, coming into this week, he plays well against Philly, and he did just that. But you can't have that happen. You just can't. You can't. You cannot do that in that big of a situation. It ended up, I think, being the difference because later on down the line, you know, I think there's a 4th down play, and they missed that too. You know, it's like in the middle of the field, Dak throws the ball. I think it was Jalen Tolbert or it was a receiver. It might have been him, but it just wasn't like a great throw, wasn't a great play call, wasn't a great anything on that in that place. And then, you know, you go down to the final drive, and it's just penalties got them all the way down the field with minimal time, and they look like they actually have a shot. You know, they're pretty close to the end zone. And Dak takes a sack. And again, like I said, Dak had a really good game. But one, you can't take a sack in that situation. If you feel any kind of pressure coming, you know, you got to throw that ball away. Dak's been plagued by this his whole career. He's not one to throw the ball away. He wants to expend the play and make plays, and he does that. But it comes at a cost. So, like your point said, though, or like to your point, though, Terrence Steele, he can't be doing that in that big of a situation either. So it's not on just Dak. It's not on just Terrence. I think it's on a lot of the offense. But just miscues, man. It's just a lot. They had every single chance to win that game, and they didn't. In the second half, you know, I don't know if they led. I don't think they did because I think it was 17-14 at half. And then, and then they got the touchdown. Which would have made it 23. And then I think Philly got the touchdown right at a half and then another one. So, yeah, I don't know if they led, but it's just not something you want to see. You know, Dallas is not a team that can play from behind, I guess. So you got to make the most of your opportunities when you're given them, and they were given a lot of them, and they didn't make any of them. So if you convert just one of those things that I talked about, I think this game is a Dallas win. You get the touchdown in the end zone. That's 6-7 points right there. You get that 2-point conversion. Now you're down 25-28, and you can go and kick a field goal and go into overtime. I mean, you saw them go down the field. So if Dak throws a touchdown in the end zone at the end of the game, yeah, exactly. Like they win. You know, it's just any of these things go right, they win the game. You know, obviously with some conditions attached to it, but they're in a much better chance to win the game. And it's just Philly didn't play an amazing game, but they scored when they needed to. Their defense played pretty well. You know, they got stops when they needed to, and they won the game because of it. And it came down to those couple plays, and Dallas just didn't make the plays. And it sucks because I don't mean to go on a rant here, but it just sucks because you keep seeing this with Dallas over the past couple years. They just don't make the big plays and the big moments, and they don't do the things they're supposed to do, like beat, you know, these inferior teams. You see Arizona with that that loss this year. But I don't want to go on a rant. I just think that this game was very winnable. I think that they could have won it, but they just didn't execute when they had to. Defense played pretty well, though. I will say that.
I think you can't knock the defense. To hit on a couple of your points, I do think that what lost that game was obviously, you know, the plays that you talked about with Dak stepping out, with Dak taking a sack, yes. But like you said, that's not all on Dak. That's also on the offensive line. And, you know, when you're sitting there in that situation, you know what you can't do, and then it happens, and then you know what you can't do, and it happens again.
Yeah.
So,
2 sacks,
you know, typically,
in that last drive.
You know, exactly. And that's going to hurt you no matter what, no matter who you are. When you look at the analytics when it comes to penalties, it's really, really, it's a drive killer, essentially. If you get a penalty early on in the drive, it's a drive killer. If you get a sack, it's even more of a drive killer. So you don't want to deal with that. But the Cowboys did, and they almost came out on top. So I chalk this up as definitely a loss, but at the same time, almost a win in some categories, because Dallas, I think this team can beat Philadelphia, definitely. Absolutely. This game was very close, and I think that you saw that the NFC East was actually a lot closer than you thought it was, with the two teams at the top, with Philadelphia and Dallas. I'm not worried about the Giants, not worried about Washington. But last thing I'll say on the Cowboy game, and to hit on your last point, and something that you kind of hear a lot with Dallas, is late game management and late game play calls. That's why the Cowboys have gotten knocked out of a lot of games over the past couple of years since Mike McCarthy's been at the helm. And no different this year, and no different this game. There was definitely a lot of questionable calls at the end of that game. And that's the biggest question mark to me, is why does Dak take that sack there? But at the same time, you're right. He's going to try to make all of the plays. So you get it and you take it. You know what I mean? But Dallas plays the Giants this week, a division matchup. We'll get into that preview in a second. Speaking of preview and picks, we won't talk about the Cowboys any longer, because we're going to do it again next week, and we still got to pick the previews for this upcoming week. Tanner, go ahead and update the listeners with the results from last week and the season results as well.
It's getting interesting here, because Chad and I think we're doing well. I did well. Chad did pretty good. I went 4-1. Chad went 3-2. I think, I don't remember what the swing game was, but overall season stats, we are both 28-18. So that is cool. I mean, look at us. It's like we came from the same mother. I mean, god dang. Look at us go. It's pretty good. 28-18. It's almost like 3-2 ratio. That's pretty good. I'm okay with that.
And if you look at it, it's only been 2 weeks where we went like 0-5 and
Exactly.
0-6.
Yeah.
That's it. Those are the only 2 weeks. Every other week, it's been extremely positive. So this is the section of the show where if you're a bettor, you should probably listen, because Tanner and I have, I don't know. Maybe we've made some people some money. That'd be cool. You know what I mean?
You're welcome.
We definitely have breaking news sports market. Come on. We got the Thursday night game, like always. We're gonna hit the Sunday morning game, Sunday afternoon game, Sunday night game, and then Monday night game. This week, Thursday night game. The Panthers versus the Bears. I mean, go ahead. I mean, just take it. I don't take it. I think the Bears win. I don't want to pick the Bears, but I'm going to pick them.
Yeah.
The Panthers have won one game, but I don't want to pick the Bears, but I can't pick the Panthers.
It's
like I'm going to go Bears, I guess, with the backup QB. Maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty much a toss-up, because you don't really know. It's kind of a contest of who can suck less. I mean, I think I saw Bryce Young throw 2 pick sixes last week, and but it's like picking between your least favorite candies. Like, I don't want either of these. Can I have something else? No, it's Thursday Night Football. That's all you're getting. I might turn on
like the apple Laffy, like you're sitting there with the Laffy Taffies and you got like the strawberry one, and then you got an apple sitting there, and you take the apple. You're like, what?
It's like,
what am I doing?
It's like, you went through all your full size candies. You went through your Skittles, your M&Ms and stuff like that, and you got these weird little like boxes of like caramel bites that every grandma gives to their grandchild. Sorry, Grandma, if you're listening, but
they're so good though. Thanks, Grandma.
All right, not my cup of tea. But I'm gonna pick the Bears, because I think their backup quarterback has actually looked pretty decent over the past couple of weeks. Whatever his name, Bagent, I think his name is.
Yeah, Bagent.
He's looked okay. Surprisingly, maybe even a little bit better than when Justin Fields was in there. But it's kind of hard, because the Panthers look like they could be and should be a good team on paper, but Bryce Young just isn't playing well. But that could turn around this week, because the Bears defense has not been great this season. So I don't know. I'm going to pick the Bears, though. I think they've been more consistent over the stretch, and I think they can run the ball pretty consistently. So give me the Bears, and Panthers are going to continue to struggle. Bryce Young, Can we get a do-over with the Panthers in the NFL draft? Is that allowed? Can we get a do-over? Just go grab CJ Stroud real quick.
Houston's like, yeah, no shot. But Panthers, their roster's all right. You know what I mean? I think the Bears have a better roster than the Panthers personally. I think that the Panthers just have a ton of young talent, and realistically, yeah, Bryce Young's not playing that well because he doesn't have a whole lot of time and he doesn't have a whole lot of people to throw to or run the ball. I think that you could quite literally get an upgrade on every single position on that offense, and then defense, very few standouts on the Panthers side as well. Bears just traded for Montez Sweat, signed him for like a $74 million contract over the next 4 years. So you're going to see him. He's going to be geared and ready to go. And once again, it's the Bears defense. The Bears always have a pretty decent defense year over year, usually in the top 15 of the league. If not in the top 15 of the league, then definitely not at the very end of the league. You know what I mean? And when you're not toward the bottom of the league in defense, then you usually have a chance to win games. And the Bears have over these past couple weeks. And I mean, over these past couple years. And this year, your starting quarterback's injured. That's an excuse in the NFL. In college, you have a 5-star recruit sitting there waiting, 4-star recruit sitting there waiting. In the NFL, that's an excuse. That's a very good excuse. So if the Bears do take the L, we're going to blame it on that, of course. But the Bears have, I think, better playmakers and just in a better team overall. And that's why I also have the Bears on this one on Thursday night.
I think too. I think this happened today too. The Panthers signed Blake Martinez, and he's a pretty good linebacker too. If you remember, I think he played for the Giants, and I think he played for the Packers at some point too. But
Oklahoma State, 100+ tackles each year, baller.
Heck yeah! So that's in my opinion, a big upgrade to that defense. Big upgrade. Hopefully he can conjure up ghosts of Luke Kuechly past. You know what I mean? Over there in Carolina, but. I like that signing. I like it a lot. I don't really know. I don't remember what he did wrong. I looked into it a little bit. It's like a Pokemon card scandal or something like that. And it
well, he didn't. I think he legit retired from the NFL.
Yeah,
and he didn't play anymore because he was making more money with Pokemon cards. And I'm sitting there like, man, that was a prospect I called in like the later rounds, and then he nails a Charizard. And I'm like, okay, I can't get mad. You know what I mean? I had all those cards too. I'm unfortunate that my mom just threw them away. Same with the Power Rangers. You know what I mean? They just got tossed away. I was absolutely. We were wheeling and dealing. I think I was one of the main reasons at my elementary school Pokemon cards weren't allowed because, I mean, that and Yu-Gi-Oh, we'd sit there and duel, and I'd take other kids' cards.
Well, yeah, I remember you'd come home with cards and you'd add them to like your big old like booklet that had like a bunch of sleeves in it, and you told me never to touch. And so, yeah, you were wheeling and dealing. I trust you. And hey, I guess it's a lucrative business if you quit the NFL to go sell Pokemon cards. I mean, hey, if we still had them, you know where I'd be. But I think it's a really good signing regardless. I think it'll take them a little bit to get back into shape, get back into football form. But really good signing by the Panthers and, absolutely bulk up that defense a little bit because Lord knows they need it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's an under the radar signing that, you're not going to hear on much other sports podcasts. Good shout out there, Tanner. That's a prospect that you and I both know very well. And that one didn't make it on the notes today, but great job there. And now I'm a little excited for Thursday Night Football this week. Let's rock and roll, baby.
He probably won't play, but it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I know. But just the fact that he's going to be there, just I could potentially see him on the sideline.
You could.
I could. Sunday morning, very early again, my time, 6:30 a.m. We got the Colts and the Patriots. This one is interesting. Who do you got? Because I know who I got. It really wasn't that hard for me, but I'm interested to see who you go.
I'm going to go, and I'm going to go with my heart here. I think my heart kind of aligns with my brain because I'm going to go with the Patriots. And the reason is they haven't had a great season. I get it. But it's Bill Belichick. It's in the AFC. It's an AFC matchup against the Colts. And it's Gardner Minshew on the other side. He's a good quarterback, but, he likes to turn the ball over. He likes to make mistakes. That's a reason why he's a backup. And Bill Belichick likes to game plan, and he likes to make his note, make his mark on kind of these struggling NFL teams. I think, Bill Belichick, he's a really good head coach, and he's gonna get his guys ready for this game against Gardner Minshew. And I think he's just gonna kind of tell Mac Jones, go out there and don't turn the ball over, man. I mean, I say this a lot, but I've seen Bill Belichick win with Mac Jones throwing the ball like 2 or 3 times. Granted, that was in the snow, but he could do it again. He could do it again. I
Especially
think,
with the resurgence of Ramondre Stevenson last week.
oh my gosh, yeah, not even mentioning that. But I think Bill Belichick's going to go out there and show you why he's, one of the greatest coaches of all time on Sunday morning.
Yeah. If not the greatest coach of all time, right? I mean, you have a team that's a backup quarterback. If you have a backup quarterback going against Bill Belichick, I'm going to take Bill Belichick every time.
Mm-hmm.
I should have listened to myself and gone with the Steelers last week. I'm still mad that I picked the Titans over the Steelers, even though it was a very close game at the end there. But you never go against a rookie quarterback or a backup quarterback, which was technically the case for both on Tennessee, with a veteran coach like a Mike Tomlin or a Bill Belichick. Those guys know how to stop those guys. They know how to stop them. And I think that's what they're going to do. And I really don't even think that Belichick's worried, but of course he's not going to let Minshew get cooking. I think that the Patriots game plan is very simple. Like you said, they do not turn the ball over 100%. They keep the game manageable. They keep it within distance, and they do not let Jonathan Taylor get going on the ground.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. And they limit Michael Pittman. That's it. That's all they have to do, and they win the game, in my opinion. So I definitely got the Patriots there too. Jumping to the Sunday afternoon game, the Cowboys and the Giants, quick and simple. Once again, Giants haven't beat the Cowboys in a very long time. Daniel Jones, I think, tore his ACL again, if I'm not mistaken.
He's out for the season.
Yeah, he's out for the season, so arguably they have a better quarterback back there now anyway. But I got the Cowboys. I think they're projected to win by 20. I don't know if they get the 20 piece, but Dallas doesn't like to lose back-to-back weeks, and that team is pissed after this Eagles week. So I think the Dallas Cowboys easily handle the New York Giants this week.
Do we get, I'm picking Cowboys, but do we get another defensive touchdown? And is it a DaRon Bland pick 6?
Why not? Sign me up.
I'm okay with that.
Absolutely sign me up. The fact that Trayvon Diggs goes out and does what he did last year with how many interceptions he has, and then you have DaRon Bland, who is not a number 1 cornerback, and he comes in and has the most pick 6s in the league. It's like, yeah, I'll take it. And there's one reason that is. It's very simple. His name is Dan Quinn.
Yep.
So as soon as Dallas loses Dan Quinn, I'm not sure how the defense looks, and that's what we'll get to in the off-season episodes of RDH Sports. But you said you got the Cowboys over Giants, obviously. Any other notes on that one, or do we get to jump to Sunday night?
I mean, they're gonna win.
There we go. There we go. If they don't, I bet we'll hear it in the comments.
Oh my god!
Sunday night we got Jets against the Raiders.
Dude,
go ahead.
I'm angry, and I just want them to stop putting the Jets on primetime. And I get it. It's because Aaron Rodgers was on the team and he was starting at the very beginning of the season. But just flex it out a little bit, make some differences. I don't want to watch the Jets anymore. No offense, New York. Both your teams are not that good, and I don't want to watch you twice in 1 week. No offense. That's pretty much my take. But I'm actually going to take the Jets here because I think the Raiders are looking a little rough recently, even though they destroyed the Giants. But again, anyone can do that. So it's the Jets defense kind of versus the Raiders, period, because I think the Jets offense is going to get rolling a little bit, get the ball to Breece Hall, and that defense, I think it's just going to win you the game. I really think that's just what it's going to come down to. That defense, Sauce Gardner, they're going to play well, and the Raiders haven't looked consistent all season. So give me the Jets.
I think the Jets have a really good defense, and I think the Jets are probably a little bit favorited in this game. I'm going to go, just for sake of argument, I'm going to go Raiders, just so we're going against different teams on Sunday night. I was going to take whichever team you didn't pick on this one because I honestly think this game's a complete toss-up. I think that if Josh Jacobs and or Devontae, I think you have a better option of getting Josh Jacobs going over Devontae Adams, but at the same time, you have seen Sauce get some catches on him recently, not a ton, but still get some catches on him. But Oakland's What are they going to be doing at quarterback for that game if the Jets start to get pressure on that offensive line, which they have been doing consistently week over week? It's going to be a long night for the Raiders. I could see it being a long night for the Raiders, but I'm going to go with them just because they got the new head coach. They're going to keep this thing rolling.
I like
I
it.
think the Jets are definitely a beatable team, and I do see the Raiders getting at least one turnover in terms of Zach Wilson. I'd be very surprised if he manages the ball, especially on Sunday night. Those jitters are going to be even more there. But I got the Raiders on Sunday night with the new head coach, and he starts to make a name for himself. At least that's what I want to see happen. But we'll see what happens. Monday night, we got the Broncos and the Bills. Last time we watched the Broncos play a top team in the AFC, they beat the Chiefs. So this one isn't necessarily the biggest, the easiest pick, but I'm still going to go Bills here. I think Josh Allen absolutely gets a revenge game after this loss to the Bengals that he most recently had, and he's still kind of angry about that one. So I'm going to go Bills over Broncos on that one. I'm going to take a random guess. You're going Bills too.
I do like the Bills in this matchup, but so should everyone. I think the Broncos, they're not a bad team. They're really not. Obviously, you saw them beat the Chiefs, but I think the Bills are just a better team overall. And I'm just not really buying Denver stock. No offense, Denver, but like the Bills are a good team. I think it's going to be close though. I think Josh Allen may throw a turnover or two because that's just what he likes to do, and they'll keep the Broncos in the game. They've been playing well offensively, and this Buffalo defense has been struggling. So I think the Bills win it, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think it's going to be another one of those ugly games from the Bills, but still get the dub.
We'll see what happens on Monday night. Any last notes? Or are we good to kick this thing, Tanner?
I do want to mention one thing, and I'd be curious to see what your input is on this. And we haven't talked about it at all on the podcast, and I've been watching and I've been very excited about it. Is the Spurs and their new rookie Victor Wembanyama. I saw you put it in the podcast notes, and I'm like, of course we're gonna talk about him because he's been balling. He's been playing really well, and not long ago he had a 38-point game, and he looks really good for the Spurs. The Spurs overall as a team, they're not amazing, but he's kind of their entire team right now. If some of the other guys get going, the Spurs can maybe, start making some headway. But Wembanyama's the real deal. He's just a freak. He's athletic. His traits alone, just on his body size and the things that he can do, are just unique. You just don't see it very often in the NBA, and he makes guys like Kevin Durant look small. And it's like, oh, I didn't think that was possible. And, they beat the Suns twice in that series, but they've had some inconsistency overall with just the team and everything like that. But Wembanyama, I think he's here to stay. I think he's probably number 1 or number 2 so far in rookie voting when it comes to the NBA. I think Chet, who plays over for the Thunder, I think he's playing really well too. So it's going to be a race between those two. But I don't know, man. I really like Wemby. I think he's fun to watch. If you haven't seen a game of his yet, do yourself a favor and load up a Spurs game and just watch him work, because it's just fun. There's so many more interesting things and unique things you can do on the court because he's out there, and just the ability to play so many different ways. He can shoot from 3. He can play in the paint. He can be physical. He can post you up, and it doesn't matter because his arms are as big as my room. Like he doesn't even have to jump to dunk. So it's like it's impressive. It's hard to guard in the NBA, and he has a lot more opportunity, that I'd say, than the average like rookie coming in. So you're not hearing a lot about any other rookies. It's because he's just Wembanyama's been lighting it up. But what have you watched? Have you watched him?
He's been as advertised. Yeah. I mean,
exactly.
I was fortunate enough to watch that 38 piece that he dropped, and I've seen the other games that he watched. I watched his rookie debut as well. He had the exact same stats as Tim Duncan, former power forward for the Spurs, one of the best of all time. But yeah, man, I think it's one of those things where I think that there's a reason he's always on SportsCenter. LeBron was always on SportsCenter, and this kid is a generational talent. And talking to somebody that I'm assuming we'll get on the pod at some point with our friend Logan, he was talking about how he's a generational player. And I completely agree with him. And the point that he made is LeBron's starting to go out in terms of generational player, and we got a new one coming right back in. And it always seems to happen that way. You had Kobe, and then LeBron came in, like you said, as well. So got to bring those points up. Got to shout him out on the pod. But specifically with Victor Wembanyama, somebody that takes 2 steps when you get to the 3-point line and you take 2 steps and you're at the basket and you're not doing it awkwardly, I I I don't know how to defend that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're less than 7 foot, he's like 7'7", and his wingspan is
huge.
I think the biggest of all time. You know what I mean? It's like how do you block this guy? And like you just said, he spotted up on KD. I watched it. Back, turnaround shooter, and he shot over him. KD knew what he was doing, and he shot over him, which is crazy. The only guys you're going to be able to get to stop him is going to be a center or somebody that has crazy ups. I mean, yes, he's gotten blocked in the NBA, but still, like it's a guy that I've never seen a player like this. Now his arms are as long as the court, and so are his legs. So like you would just think, what happens when this kid continues to develop coordination, and what happens when this kid actually starts to put on more muscle? And oh, by the way, what happens when he gets used to the NBA? Because he hasn't even played a whole 10 games yet. And he dropped a 38 piece. That you don't just do that if you're not going to be somebody great. You know what I mean? I think that Wembanyama has the potential to be great. And I think he has one of the greatest coaches coaching him. And I think that what you're seeing right now is a very similar situation to LeBron James in Cleveland. There's nobody around him. Sorry, there's not a lot of people around him. I think that the Spurs absolutely have a better roster than the Cleveland Cavaliers when LeBron came in, but there's not a ton of people around him, and everybody knows the ball's going to Wembanyama, but he still continues to perform at this high of a level. I want to see what happens year over year, obviously, and I want to see what happens with the injuries because his body just doesn't make sense. Like, to me, his body just doesn't make sense. I'm just waiting for something to break, but it just doesn't. So this kid's fun to watch. He makes non-basketball fans watch basketball.
Yeah.
Just like on the other side of the pond, you have Connor Bedard, who is one of the best generational prospects that I've ever seen coming into hockey, playing for the Chicago Blackhawks. And it's really fun right now in sports because you have San Antonio, who has a kid out of France who is probably, if he continues this, is going to go down as the greatest French player, maybe overtaken a former French player at the Spurs with Tony Parker. You know what I mean? So there's a rich history there with the Spurs and Greg Popovich and everybody. And I mean, last thing I'll say, because clearly sports guy, watched San Antonio a lot, especially when Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker were there. If you can't tell, Robert Horry was also there too. But all those guys are still around. So he gets to talk to Tim Duncan. He gets to talk to Tony Parker, especially Tony Parker. And he gets to talk to Manu Ginobili. I mean, Manu Ginobili isn't necessarily around, but Tim Duncan is. And that's crazy that he just has them at their disposal. And oh, by the way, his coach is Greg Popovich. So he has the best mind in the NBA right now. So he's not only making him a better player physically, he's making him a better player mentally. And in the fact that you're checking even more boxes with him is just so scary. And I do think that this kid is a kid, maybe not this season, but when they get one more piece, the Spurs are an automatic playoff team. If he's healthy, automatic, because there's a reason there hasn't been hype like this around a player. And you have the non-basketball every night watcher over here, falling out of his seat at the beginning of the episode because, Wembanyama, right? Like, it's just unbelievable. The kid is unbelievable, and he's so young. So, yes, I've watched him, and I'm super excited to see where he continues to go because that is a scary basketball player.
I think
scary.
I think the big thing too is what a lot of not a lot of people are talking about is he's kind of the guy that they're going to in like those clutch situations. It's the end of the game
already.
You need points. Put the ball in Wembanyama's hands and let him work. And he's, for the most part, he's been, like you said, as advertised. He's been that clutch point scorer. He's been the person you can rely on in those big situations. I mean, it's really impressive from someone who is really young and playing in the NBA for his first time. Of course, he played overseas, but it's just not the same level. So it's awesome to see that he already has this like mentality about him. And I think they asked him it after one of the games, and he was like, someone's got to do it. And that, I mean, such a humble response. It's just like, it's not. He knows what needs to happen, and if it's going to be him to step up, absolutely he's going to do it. But he's got the skills, he's got the talents, and his teammates trust him with the ball, and he goes out there and he makes plays. So he's only going to get better too, which is the insane thing. And he's already pretty damn good. So it's like, what? What? San Antonio, it's a bright future. And I love this franchise, and I have for a long time. And it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun. Come on.
It's fun. It's fun to be a Spurs fan. You not necessarily there now, and me on the other side with the Lakers. The only team I really, aside from the Angels, the only team I've watched really win a championship with the Lakers. So you've seen it with the Spurs,
and
but
now
hey,
the Rangers. Hey,
and now the Rangers. That is true.
Full
now the
circle.
Rangers saw with the Rangers. Got to bring it back in, but. We'll see what happens. It's an exciting time to be a Spurs fan, and Wembanyama continues to get better week over week. But hey, I think that was enough sports talk for this episode. You ready to kick this one till next week?
Heck yeah. We'll see what crazy things Victor Wembanyama does this week, folks. And we'll be back. Don't worry. I won't forget about it again.
See you, folks.
Bye.